I'll start with the chant. Om Sarvadharmasthapakas-tvam Sarvadharmaswarupakah Acharyana Mahacharya Ramakrishnaya Te Namah. So, I hope we are all feeling alert and limber after that stretching exercise. For the conclusion, I have a beautiful sutra from the Naradiya Bhakti Sutras. This is the 79th sutra, and it goes like this. Sarvada sarvabhavena nishchintitehi bhagavaneva bhajaniya. What does that mean? At all times and in all ways, without anxiety, God alone is worth worshipping. Yes. I really like that one. One reason is there's an old Sanskrit saying, Mahajanagata ya pantha sa pantha. What is the spiritual path? What are we supposed to do in spiritual life? The more you read, the more bewildered we become. The more you listen, the more bewildered we become. There are so many teachers and so many paths and so many things to do, so much different kinds of advice. What is the way? And this saying, if I'm not wrong, it is from the Mahabharata. It says, finally, the path on which the great ones have walked is the path. So when you see people you feel inspired by, if you read the lives of the saints, what they did in their lives, that is the path. Quite apart from all philosophies and texts and so on, what they did in their lives, that's the path. We need to walk on the path of the saints. There also you might say, but there were many kinds of saints and they did many kinds of practices. Well, one thing that they did, at least the ones in the theistic religions, all of them intensively loved and worshipped God. That's one thing they did. All saints, all together, all of them. Sorry about that. So this is the one thing that I want to end with, that this intense love and devotion to God alone. At all times, in all manners, being free from anxiety, completely free from anxiety, worship the Lord alone. Anxiety is fear, anxiety is a primal condition. We often say in spiritual life that the obstacle is desire, but even deeper than desire, the obstacle is fear. The Upanishads say, Dvitiyadvai bhayam bhavati. From the existence of an other, from the presence of an other, there comes fear. Overcoming fear and anxiety in life. There is this beautiful verse which compares anxiety, worry, to a funeral pyre. Hindus, when somebody dies, we cremate the body. We don't bury it, we cremate it. Hindus, Buddhists, Indian religions. So, um, so Chitta means, is a play on words. In Sanskrit, in Hindi, many Indian languages, Chitta means the funeral pyre, the fire in which the body is burnt at death. And Chinta is almost the same. Chinta means anxiety. So Chitta and Chinta. Chinta is anxiety, and Chitta is the funeral fire. Chinta Chitta Samakhyata. Chinta Chittato api adhika. So let me complete it. Chitta mitam hi dahyati. Chinta jivam tu dahyati. So the anxiety is compared to the funeral fire, and anxiety is in fact worse than the funeral fire, because the funeral fire consumes you when you're dead, consumes the body when it's dead. but anxiety consumes us when we are alive. So anxiety is worse than the funeral fire. I remember this monk I used to study under in the Himalayas. This was 20 years ago. Now, this monk was a Punjabi monk, and he used to live in the Himalayas. He was a non-dualist and quite obese, a massive person, quite obese, and in his early 80s at that time. So, because he was obese and not too healthy, a doctor came to check him up, and so the doctor was skinny, and the doctor was saying, "Swami, what do you eat that become so grossly fat?" And Swami, the monk, he said, I'll tell you what he said in Hindi first and then translate. He said, um, डॉक्टर हम चिंता को खा जाते हैं और तुम्हें डॉक्टर चिंता चबा जाती है. So, oh doctor, I eat, I chew up all my worries. I eat all my worries and anxieties. That's why I'm fat. It's a lot of trash food. It is a lot of fast food, unhealthy food. But I eat it up. Whereas you, oh doctor, because the doctor was skinny, nervous, anxious type, and you, oh doctor, your anxieties are eating you up. I eat up my anxieties, and your anxieties are eating you up. That's precisely it. How do we prevent our anxieties, our worries from eating us up? Sarvada sarva bhavena bhagavan eva bhajaniya. First and foremost, the only thing that we really need to be concerned with in this life is God. That does not seem apparent. We always think that we have many things we need to be concerned with in this life. My finances, my children, my house, my health, insurance, all of these, and society and environment, and so many, many things to be concerned about. No, no, no. Almost none of these things, either we cannot do much about them, or worrying about it does not do much good at all. The serenity prayer is a beautiful, beautiful sentence, piece of advice. That Lord, give me the courage to change the things that I can change, the patience to bear those that I cannot change, and the wisdom to know the difference. So we often are concerned with a lot of things which we cannot change in our lives. And the things that we can change in our lives, we don't pay attention to. So by default, they are there and they are there and they worry us. What we need to pay attention to is worshiping God. The only thing worth thinking about is the Lord. In the last discussion, I mentioned that japa, the repetition of the mantra, how valuable it is. Once you have the mantra, one good practice is to think that these things that I'm thinking right now, these feelings that I'm feeling right now, are any of them as important or as valuable or as beneficial as the mantra which I already have received? And often we'll find to our amazement, no, the mantra is much more valuable than this next thought that I'm going to have. So in most cases, there are certain things that are urgent, which need to be dealt with right away. Otherwise, fill the mind with the mantra. The mind with the mantra will soon become a holy mind. Sarvada, at all times. Now, here is something interesting. Often we hear this statement that think about God all the time. It sounds cool that I am thinking about God all the time, but it's really not very practical. It's really not very possible. How can you think about God all the time? There is a way. There is a way. If you can see God in something which is present all the time, if we can see God in something that's present all the time anyway, if something is always there in our lives anyway, and we realize that is God, then you will be thinking about God all the time. So, what is it that is present all the time? Well, only two things are present all the time. One is the world. The world is present all the time, as long as you're awake or even when you're dreaming, not so much when you're in deep sleep. But anyway, in deep sleep, you cannot think. So thinking about God is not an option. But as long as you're awake, the only thing that is constantly present is just this, the universe, the world. people, places, things. Things are going on. In the final stages of spiritual realization, one realizes that all is God. Whoever, whatever we are coming across, whatever we are, with eyes open and with eyes shut, there's only one divinity that exists. Until we reach that, when we reach that, yes, all our experiences will be God experience. But until we reach that, how are you to think about God all the time? So the world is present all the time, but until we realize that the world is nothing but God, and then every interaction with the world becomes a God experience. But other than that, how are you to think about God all the time? The mind is constantly changing. Put a thought into the mind, the next moment the thought is out. So with some great effort, we might think about God some of the time, but not all the time. And I said there's a second thing which is present all the time. And you might have guessed what it is. It is you. I. I am always there. When I am there, there's one thing that's surely there, that is I, and the self. And that is, again, Swami Atmarupanandaji's lane. That is the Advaitic equation of the self and Brahman. And I am Brahman. When I realize that, yes, I'm always in the presence of the divine, because the divinity is reflected, shines through my own existence. But let's be more humble. Right now, in our state, how can we think about God? Even if I cannot think about God all the time, then what do I do? One thing to do is, one practice is what is called space lock, time lock, object lock. Um, Instead of letting my mind go all over the place, what the mantra Diksha does is, it says lock your mind in one place, here, in the heart, right here. In the heart, tell your mind, you're not going to think about you're not going to go any place else except this heart. You're going to inhabit this place, and you're not going to think about anything else in any other place. Second, a time lock. A time lock is, yes, I cannot think about God all the time, but I can think about God from this time to this time. So for the next 10 minutes or for the next 20 minutes, I'm locking my mind in. The next 20 minutes, oh mind, you're not allowed to think of anything else but, my mantra or my chosen deity. So 20, a time lock, locking it in within 2 periods of time. And then the object lock. What am I going to think about? No other object except the mantra and the chosen deity, the deity in which I'm worshipping God, or in some divine, even if we are not initiated, some divine thought of God in some form. So time lock, space lock, object lock. This is a way to begin. To think about God all the time is the goal, but this is the way to begin. Then there is Sarvabhavena. In all ways. Think about God in all ways. It's very interesting. In all ways. In what way are we supposed to think about God? What is our idea of God in the devotional path? If you look at the Bhagavad Gita, we come across um, mm, at least 4 clear, distinct ideas of God. What is God? 4 clear, distinct ideas. What are they? First is, in the Gita, you come across Krishna. So Krishna clearly himself says, I am God. He's an incarnation of God. So if I think God is Krishna, this person, this blue person, this is the life story of Krishna, this personal God that I have. For me, God is Krishna, or God is Jesus, or God is Ramakrishna. So that's one idea of God. It's a personal God. Now, there is a deeper idea of God presented in the Gita and other texts also, which is, just for example, in the Brahma Sutras, Janmadhyasya yataha asya jagata janmasthiti bhanga yasmat tad brahma. That which is the source of this universe, the creator, preserver, and destroyer of this universe, that is God. There is a power. Now, this is the common definition of God in all religions. Whichever religion believes in God, believes in the creator God, the God who created this universe. So there is a power, an ultimate power, and it's one power which created this entire universe, which preserves this, is maintaining this universe, everything here. runs according to its will, and then finally it will dissolve this universe and again start another cycle of creation. Because the Hindus believe in the cyclic theory of creation, preservation, destruction, and further creation, and so on. So this is the idea of God. This is second idea of God, and we get this in the Bhagavad Gita also. So that's the God we worship in bhakti, in love, the omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent, all powerful, present everywhere, all knowing, and all the omnis. So that is associated with God, with the idea of God. That's a traditional idea of God in all religions. Whichever religion believes in God, they believe in this kind of a God. Then there's a third idea of God, which you get in the Bhagavad Gita. Not just a personal God, Krishna, not just Narayana or Vishnu who creates, preserves, and destroys the world and lives in his abode in Vaikuntha. No, the God who is immanent in this universe. So, this entire universe, the material, the reality of this universe is God. The Mundaka Upanishad gives this idea of the immanence of God. Yathornanabhi srijate grinhate cha. Just as a spider spins out a web and later pulls it in out of its own body. Yatha satah purushad keshalomani. Yatha prithivyam oshadaya sambhavanti. As from a living body, our hair and our nails and all that grows, the beard and mustache, and all of that grows. As from the earth, herbs and plants grow, so in that way, tathaksharat sambhavati iha vishwam. There, in that way, from the imperishable, from the akshara, this universe emerges. What does it mean? Just as the spider spins the web from the material of its own body. So, what is the web made of? It's made of the material of the spider's body. Just as hair and nails and all emerge from this living human body, just as plants grow on the earth, in the same way the universe emerges. It's a poetic way of putting it, but basically what it's saying, philosophically speaking, what it is saying is the material cause of this universe is God. Material cause means the stuff out of which the universe is made. And so, but now it is matter, it's atoms and protons and neutrons, and now they're talking about superstrings. It's not God. But yes, then the question will be, what are the superstrings made of? And where does it bottom out? And Vedanta would say it bottoms out in God. The foundation is God. There is that funny story they tell in philosophy classes. The one ancient idea was the entire universe is balanced on a tortoise, on a cosmic tortoise, um, uh, a turtle, on a turtle's back. The universe is on a turtle's back. And a philosopher, one lady said this to a philosopher who was talking about the origins of the universe. And this lady came up and said, "Very clever young man, but everybody knows that the world is on the back of a turtle." And the philosopher said kindly to that old lady, "But madam, what does the turtle stand on?" And with a twinkle in her eyes, she said, "Very clever again, but everybody knows it's turtles all the way down." It's turtles all the way down. Um, so Vedanta would say it bottoms out in God. In what sense? There's a very clear philosophical sense in which it is intended. It all bottoms out in existence. So being or existence, that is the reality out of which our reality is constructed. So this is the third idea of God, which you find in the Bhagavad Gita and the Bhakti traditions. God is in and through everything. Whatever we are experiencing, God is immanent. One must be careful here. We are not talking about pantheism. And it's just a side note. Whenever we say that God is everywhere, God is in everybody, we run the risk of what is called pantheism, saying that this world is God. Vedanta comes very close to it, saying that this world is God. What's wrong with saying that? Well, lots of things are wrong. First of all, there is a lot that is miserable and horrible about this world. And if so, if this world is literally God, then you're going to say God is evil, God is misery, God is horrible, because there are miserable and horrible and evil things in this world. So, do you literally mean that? Do you literally mean God is evil? That's crazy. No, nobody says that. In that sense, it can't be literally true that this world itself is God. And the other criticism, simple criticism of pantheism, which I found in a philosophy book, is this, simply this. When you say this world as it is God, tables and chairs are God, what we have just done is take the world and give it a new name, God. You didn't say anything new. You didn't teach us anything. You just, this world is God. Well, so what? You've just changed the name. I used to call it the world, and you're calling it God now. It adds nothing to my knowledge. No, what Vedanta says is what we experience as the world is really God. So if we would know it really, we would find God. If we do not know it, in an error, we think of this world. So all the defects are in our error, all the defects are in the manifestation, but in the substance, in the reality, there is no problem. The divinity is maintained. Anyway, that's just a sort of theological side note. So that is the third conception of God. And someone will be going, what were the first two again? The first was the personal God, Krishna. The second is the creator God, the Brahman, Saguna Brahman, out of which the universe is made, and so on and so forth. And the third one is God is in and through this universe. We are coming into God in various contact with God in various ways when we contact this universe, people and living beings and non-living things too. If we would know them truly, it's all pervaded by God. Then there is the fourth conception of God, which again is not in our lane. That is the Advaitic idea of Brahman as identical with the individual being. You and God are one reality. So these various four conceptions. When Narada says Sarva Bhavena, in all forms, in all ways, worship God. All of these should be options open to us. I have God as a personal God, a God whom I love and worship, and I have a personal relationship to that God. And yet I know very well this God is nothing other than the omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent creator, preserver, destroyer of the universe, the God of religions. And I know that God alone is present in all the beings I come into contact with, in all the living beings, human beings and other living beings. And finally, the identity of the self and Brahman. In another way, in a simpler way, this is pertinent to Hinduism. In Hinduism, it was always recognized that God can have infinite forms and can be formless too. God can have, Hinduism, there is that it's all inclusive. If you ask, I sometimes joke, if you ask any theological question to Hinduism, the answer is always yes. Do Hindus believe in God? Yes. And the answer is always no. So do Hindus believe in God? Yes. And no. There are ancient Hindu philosophies like Sankhya, which do not, at least do not talk about God explicitly, or do not, or openly do not believe in God. So yes and no. In Hinduism, every question will have the same answer, yes and no. Is God with form? Yes and no. God is formless also. Is God male? Yes and no. God is very proudly, and from the most ancient times in Hinduism, female. God as a divine mother. So, Sarva Bhavena, this is an important point to be understood in Hinduism. Sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it may be a cause of more trouble than it is worth. So I have seen shrines in the houses of Hindu devotees. The shrines look like museums, a museum of divinity. So with the icons and pictures and images. So every time this family goes to another holy place, they come back with one more god, with one more picture or one more form or deity. And then it becomes a trouble to keep all of them pleased, and then I have heard devotees nervously saying, will something bad happen to me because I didn't offer something to God in that form or this form? No, here it needs to be emphasized, there is only one God. And in Hinduism, when you worship 100 different ways or 1,000 different ways, it's not that you're worshiping different deities. It is one Brahman in different names and forms. So the most ancient of Hindu texts Rig Veda says, Ekam Sad Vipra Bahuda Vadanti. The truth is one. The ultimate reality is one. The wise talk about it differently. And we can add, the wise worship it differently. But the difference between the wise and the unwise is the wise know that all these forms are the same form. And even when I have a specific form given to me by my guru, my deity, my mantra, I'm always conscious and very clear that all these other forms are also forms of the same divinity whom I love and adore. So I have always got deep respect and devotion. If I go to a temple of another deity, I will know that my God, the word God, the way I worship, is present in that temple in that form. So there is absolutely no sense of difference. That's the wise know that the truth is one, and they worship it, they speak about it, they philosophize about it differently. And that's great. That makes the whole thing very rich. So Narada says Sarva Bhavena. In this case, it means as Shiva Bhavena, as Vishnu Bhavena, Devi Bhavena, as Ganesha, as Devi, as Shiva, as Vishnu, as the incarnations, Rama and Buddha and Krishna and Mahavira and Ramakrishna and Jesus in all the forms. This is why it is this Sarva Bhavena, this is why it was so easy for Hindus to be comfortable with foreign religions. So when they come across Christians, well and good. I'm used to worship of God in 100 different ways. Here is one more. That's wonderful. We come across Muslims. Yes, the Muslims are the people who worship God in this way. So it's not very difficult. It's in fact, I have found it more difficult in this country to really wrap my head around the idea that people are so stuck up on mine is right and everything else is wrong, or one is right and everything else is wrong, and that one usually happens to be mine. And the way I'm doing it is right and everybody else is wrong. And somehow they can't get jettison this idea so easily. It's sort of stuck deep inside here. So Sarva Bhavena, worship God in every form, um, in the as the deity in your heart, as the guru has taught you, and that same deity is in the hearts of all living beings we come across. So now you love all other beings, all other human beings and all other sentient creatures, but you love all of them as the same God, the same divinity present in all of them. So continuously we are loving that one God. See, it's all, it helps in focus. We are loving that one God, but in a diversity of names and forms, in a variety of divine names and forms, but also in a variety of worldly, of names and forms in this world, as human beings and animals and so on and so forth. Sarva Bhavena. Nischintite. I'll just say a couple of words about that and conclude. I think it's a beautiful point that Narada makes. Do so and be free of fear, be free of anxiety. We are this cartoon which showed, I remember seeing this cartoon of a man who's walking. So he slips on a banana peel in the old slapstick comedy. So he slips on a banana peel and falls down. The thing is, sometimes he slips and falls forward, sometimes he slips and falls backwards. And we are doing that all the time. Either we fall backwards into our memories and we are lost in our past and memories, or we slip and fall into the future, into our expectations of the future, or more so into our anxieties about the future. What's going to happen to me? What's going to happen to this or that? Uh, Whatever is gone, whoever is gone, the Lord has freed you of that. Take it in that way. Sounds harsh, but they are gone. The samsara, the meaning of the term samsara is a continuous, unending flow. As you see the flow of the river Ganga flowing continuously, similarly, samsara is in continuous flow. That person who's gone has flowed away, has gone. And when we think about it in memory, these are traces in our mind. That person is truly gone in that name and form. The immortal soul is always there. But in that name and form is truly, truly gone. Memory plays a trick on us by retrieving our precious memories of our time with that person as if that person was still here. No, it's not. It's gone. Yesterday is gone. Forever and irrevocably, it's gone. Don't at all dwell on it. No point at all. See, there is some point in Something is existing and you miss that person or that place or that thing or that food. You miss it. It is there, but you don't have it right now. I understand that. But if something does not exist, to miss it, to sorrow after it, that makes no sense. It's a trick that memory plays on us. It's gone. It has flowed away into nothingness. And the future, where most of our worries lie, like that man slipping and falling into the face flat into the future. The future is an imagination. It's a fantasy. It's a hallucination. It doesn't exist. Neither the past exists nor the future exists. All that exists is this living now. And this is shining, this is Brahman shining forth in all these forms. So, Nishchintite, be free of all worries. There was a man going in the train in India, and nowadays, of course, everybody has suitcases. But earlier, they would tie their possessions in a bundle and carry it on their heads. So this man with a heavy bundle on his head comes and sits in the train, and the train starts. But he's holding this heavy bundle on his head, and the passengers around him, they feel bad for him. They say, "Put it down." And out of anxiety, that man doesn't put it down. And the passengers tell him that, look, the train which is carrying you to your destination, that train will carry your bundle to your destination also. Don't worry about it. Put your bundle down. We are all on the train called God. So put your bundle down. God will carry your bundle for you without the least hesitation. God is not bothered by our troubles, our what is difficult and big and a struggle for us is as nothing for God. Swami Vivekananda put it this way: the big buffalo, and a mosquito came and sat on the horns of the buffalo. And then after some time, the mosquito felt bad and said to the buffalo, "I'm sorry, sir. I sat there. I didn't take your permission. I hope I wasn't any trouble to you." And the buffalo said, "Oh, you're there. I never noticed. There's no problem at all. You can come with your entire family and settle down there. It's no problem to me at all." Similarly, we should be able to say to the world, all the burdens of the world, "You can come and settle down on my shoulders. There's no problem at all because I'm not going to keep you on my shoulders. I'm going to put you at the feet of the Lord, and He will carry it for me." So, Nishchintite, be free from anxiety, be free from worry. Um, in fact, there's a song, Bengali song, which goes like this, a song to Sri Ramakrishna, which goes like this: Jar legeche bojha tar hoyeche soja. The one who feels life as a burden, it's actually easier for that one. For that one, can is looking for somebody to help, to lean on, and so put the burden on the feet of at the feet of the Lord. It's easier. It's not so easy for the one who doesn't realize it's a burden. The one who doesn't realize it's a burden is clutching that bundle to himself or herself so hard, doesn't even want to put it down. Jesus said so appealingly that, "Come unto me, ye that are heavy laden." So uh, all your burdens you can put on me. So Bhagavan eva bhajaniya. The Lord alone is to be worshipped. How? Without anxiety. If we truly believe in God, it's a blasphemy to be anxious. Omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent. I love that Lord, and the Lord loves me. The Lord loves me. Why is it that I'm so anxious? And anxious about what? Anxious about the Lord's property. All these people belong to the Lord. All this world belongs to the Lord. Even this body belongs to the Lord. All my affairs belong to the Lord. Why am I anxious about that? The Lord will take care. I'll end with this. Swami Ramakrishna, the disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, who started the Ramakrishna movement work in the south, in Chennai, Madras at that time. One gentleman used to come to in early days to the monastery in Madras, and he had many projects. What he wanted to do about this. So he wouldn't do anything, but he had many plans and and ideas about what should be done. And he would tell all of this to Swami Ramakrishna, who listened patiently and one day said, "Sir, I wonder what God did before you were born." So, yes, every bit of everything that is being done here, there's a power which is doing it. We need not bother with it, but one thing we need to bother with is the Lord Himself, the power itself. We should be concerned with God, not with the creations of God. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Beautiful, Swami. One question here is, how is Vijnana Vedanta of the Sri Ramakrishna different from pantheism?
Yes. Remember, so the Vijnana Vedanta, I have to congratulate Ayan Maharaj for this. He started this term, more or less coined this term, Vijnana Vedanta, and now it has become sort of current, at least amongst devotees, and I'm sure it's going to become a term in itself. Yes, the Vijnana idea of Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna says that when a person goes up on the roof of a house, to the roof of a house, he leaves behind the ground floor and the first floor and the staircase and goes to the roof. But when he goes to the roof, he realizes what the roof is made of. The same bricks, cement, mortar. The rest of the house is made of the same thing. Similarly, when one attains to the highest realization, the non-dual realization, and then looks behind at the world he left behind, this material world, the living world of the body, the world of the mind, and even in one sense, the world of God, Brahman with Maya, Saguna Brahman, looks back and sees that same Nirguna Brahman is all of this. So, as Saguna Brahman, it appears as this. Nirguna Brahman and Saguna Brahman are not different. The Absolute and God are not different. Or in Sri Ramakrishna's words, Brahman and Shakti are not different. And therefore, whatever we experience in this world is literally Brahman. Now remember, how is it different from pantheism? Pantheism says literally this world is God. So it sounds very similar. No, it isn't. Um, there is the famous poetic exchange between Mary Hale and Swami Vivekananda, where Mary Hale writes that I have understood that what you have taught us all is God. And Vivekananda wrote back saying that I never taught such strange doctrine that all is God. And she protests, but that's what you told us. He said, no, I never said that all is God. I said God only is. And that means that all is not, God only is. That's very Advaitic. Brahman only is. So in that case, if Brahman only is, then whatever we are coming into contact with, it must be Brahman. Um, if it is at all anything, then it must be Brahman because only Brahman exists. So these are all what is called Vivatta in Sanskrit, a manifestation of Brahman, names and forms which do not have any existence in themselves. They manifest Brahman to Brahman itself. You are Brahman and you are experiencing yourself as this world, as this body, as this personality, and so on. When you realize this and you live your life accordingly, it is Vijnana. Another way Sri Ramakrishna put it was, there's some people who have read about milk or heard about milk, and there are some people who have seen milk. But there are others who drink the milk and become nourished by it, and they gain strength from it, nourishment and strength from it. So that is the state of the Vijnani. The one who has read about milk is the one who has heard about religion, has heard lots of YouTube talks and read some books. That's the first one. But the one who has seen milk is the Jnani, who has the realization that Brahman exists and I am that Brahman. But the Vijnani sees everything as Brahman. Now, the pantheist will say literally the world is God. That's a naive kind of pantheism. And I mentioned two very serious defects with that kind of view. One is all the defects of this world, as we experience it, the material world, full of suffering and limitation and indeed evil, that will all infect God. And so the idea of a perfect being will be immediately ruined. And what's the point of such a God? And then the second problem is, as I mentioned, pantheism in its most naive form is nothing more than renaming the world. You're not saying anything interesting at all. If you say the world is God, what you mean is what we called the world till now, you're now giving it a new name, God. But that is not Vijnana. Vijnana is beyond non-dualism, if I have understood Sri Ramakrishna, that so the world is an appearance of Brahman, and therefore, finally, Brahman alone is what we contact when we interact with the world. That would be the difference between Vijnana and pantheism. Maharaj, I would like to, if you permit, Mataji, I would like to bring in Maharaj on this, Swami Atmarupananda ji.
Yes.
Yes, what is that, Swamiji?
The question was that
Oh,
how
yes.
is Vijnana of Sri Ramakrishna different from pantheism?
Yes, and I have nothing to add. Your answer was perfect. That the I'll just state part of what you said in a different way, but it's the same thing. Again, nothing to add except for a different expression. The problem with pantheism is that if you say that this world is God, it means that God has become the world. And then you have a God who has changed, God who was transcendental, who is perfect, who is all luminous, is now rocks and trees and lakes and planets as we experience them now. So God has changed into the material world, and what kind of God is that? That is mutable, that has changed into the world. So yes, I don't really have anything to add except for just that restatement.
And if you just extend that, what I was saying, if you just
yeah, go ahead,
extend
sir.
that, if you just extend that one more step, as you said, if God is changing, then why wouldn't you say that the God will also die? Death is one kind of
Yes,
change, it's destructible. So that
yes,
becomes
exactly.
ridiculous then, the God who's going to die.
Yes, 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 and so so that makes no sense. Now, some people will try to redefine the word pantheism, and that's okay. We do that all of the time. We redefine things and say that, oh no, there's a higher pantheism which sees that everything is an appearance of God. Well, actually, what you're doing is just restating Vedanta and calling it pantheism. So, so yeah, one has to be clear what they're talking about by their terms. But pantheism, as it usually is used, means that God has become the world, and that Vedanta will not accept.
Swami, one question. According to Sri Ramakrishna, it is the Supreme Brahman that has become the universe and its living beings. You may ask why the earth is so hard if it has come out of Brahman, implying that pure consciousness has transformed into the material universe. According to Advaita Vedanta, the material universe is an appearance in consciousness. How can we reconcile these two seemingly contradictory ideas?
All right, that's related to this question which we are just now discussing.
Yes.
So this goes back to the discussions of causality in Indian philosophy. There are these two ideas, one primary, multiple ideas actually. There is something called Arambhavada, which means an emergentism kind of philosophy, which in the Nyaya school and the Vaisheshika school hold on to, where the parts come together and create something new which was not there earlier. That was superseded by another theory called Parinamavada, the theory of transformation. It's the cause alone which continues in the form of the effect. It is from the milk you get yogurt or curds, but it's the milk alone which got transformed into the yogurt. Its cause is continuing as the effect. The effect was, and this Parinamavada is a variety of what is called Satkaryavada. That means the effect was pre-existing in the cause. So just like a big tree, we see a tree, but the seed, which does not seem like the tree at all. There are no leaves and branches. It's tiny. But the entire, now we know with this modern genetics, the entire code, all the information needed to make the tree is present in the seed. In a potential form, the tree is actually present in the seed. With the right conditions, the tree is going to come out of that same seed, and no other tree will come out of it. That particular tree is going to come out of it because that one was present in the potential form. Now, there are these theories, similar the theories which these theories of causality are used to explain how the universe came from God. The Nyaya Vaisheshika theory will say there are free floating atoms by the will of God. This matter comes together and creates the universe. Pretty scientific. I mean, in those pre-scientific days, this is a very good, in principle, the atomic theory, basically. Then the Parinama theory, which is what we are referring to, is that somehow the divinity was transformed into this universe. So isn't that pantheism? Well, no, because all the Parinama theories which are held on to, who says these things? These are often the bhakti schools of Vedanta. the devotional, dualistic schools of Vedanta, they hold on to some form of pantheism, of Parinamavada. But all of them will say to protect God from the pernicious effects of change and destruction, they will say, yes, God is transformed into the universe, but God's essential divine nature is maintained. Now, a question might be asked, how can the divinity of God be unchanged if God is changing into the universe? How can the same entity be changing and not changing? And they try to, it's a good question. That's why they try to get around it in various ways. For example, some of the schools will say, well, God as that conscious being is perfect, but it is the powers of God which get transformed into the universe. So God's divinity and perfection are protected, and while his powers are being transformed. But then it doesn't make much sense. Are the powers separate from the essential nature of God, or are they one? So in this way, uh, others will say that, well, that's the power of God. It's not like a potter making a pot. You shouldn't expect, the clay is hammered or shaped into a pot. God is not shaped into the universe in that way. After all, we are talking about God. We are not talking about clay and a pot. Yes, but all of these sound faintly magical. The philosopher and the scientist will say, if you're going to do philosophy, you're going to be reasonable, you have to use reason all through. You can't use reason up to a certain point and then say, well, it's God we are talking about, and God can do this, can reconcile change and changelessness in himself and without being affected at all. So the theory that we hold on to, the classical non-dualists, will say that the universe is God, but it's a manifestation, it's an appearance of God. Like the snake appearing in the rope. The rope is not affected at all by the snake. The snake is an appearance of the rope. Without changing, the cause without changing appears as the effect. Um, much like the sky, without becoming colored, sometimes appears as a blue sky, sometimes as a dark sky, sometimes as a bright red sky. And at no point is it red or dark or blue. It is colorless. So similarly, the Brahman appears as this universe. That's how you reconcile these. Um, so Sri Ramakrishna, when he's talking about God has become, I don't think the emphasis was on the become. Sri Ramakrishna was not discussing theories of causality there. One has to be careful. Uh, so what is Sri Ramakrishna means, I think, is that Brahman is the reality of this universe. Right? As he would say constantly, Bhagavani Vastu Ashab Avastu. So God alone is the reality. Everything else that you experience is not real in themselves. That sounds very Advaitic. The transformation theory would not say God alone is the reality and everything is unreal, because if God has transformed into this world, then this world cannot be unreal. This also must be real substance. Whereas Sri Ramakrishna says God alone is real, everything else is unreal, which means everything else is really God in and of itself is unreal.
Swami, how can we love an appearance?
We don't love the appearance, we love God. We do love appearances in ignorance. We think they are real, and that's what causes pain to us. And this is worth thinking. Why does the person whom we love, very soon, today we had a Pandit, a great scholar, giving a talk here in Vedanta Society. He says, we run after this person, and then very quickly we try to run away from this person. Why? Why would you do that? It's because what we love and desire and want are not exactly at the superficial level of appearance. We are chasing something which is superficial, which cannot give happiness in and of itself. And true love is possible, but in true love, we love the divinity within all beings. The same divinity which is within us, the same divinity is within everybody, and we love that. Um, one might say that seems cold, You don't love me, you love the God within me. Um, but that's actually true love, because your reality is the God within you. I'm loving you in your highest and best sense, not as a theory, not as an abstraction. Truly, truly. The other person who claims to love you loves a changing personality, which also mostly is that person's projection, which is not really your own reality.